So welcome to the People Performance Podcast with me, Martin Johnson.
And me, Rich Quelch.
I love it. I just said to Rich, you're going to be doing that, and he was sort of trying not to laugh already. Rich, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I've been looking forward to this one. Me and Rich go back. We've worked together, I want to say over 5 years, 6 years, maybe a little bit
longer, yeah.
Rich is the Chief Marketing Officer for John Good Group. Also recently taken on an MD role for an acquisition for your sins.
Yeah.
But Rich, just first of all, for the listeners, give us a little bit of background to you. How did you get started out? How did you get to where you are now? And what do you actually do?
Stealing and living. It's probably the sentence after that.
Love it.
Yeah, so, I mean, where I've developed, I won't go too long into this, but ultimately, my dream was to be that professional footballer. That was always my dream. So I've got that kind of that competitiveness streak through me. I want to win, that grit. That's kind of always stuck with me since day dot, really. And after being released from Hull City, of all teams, still go see them now with my own.
Come on the Tigers.
Yeah, come on the Tigers, bless them. But the change is happening there, which is quite exciting. I actually went through sixth form and then into university, and it was in sixth form I did media studies. And media studies at the time, when going through, if you can remember, was seen as a bit like one of those subject matters where it's easy to do. So you pick that as a selection. I did English Lit and Lang, which was a difficult subject, and I did physical education, PE, and the theory side of that was the hardest thing I've ever done. So it was actually one of the courses I did within media studies. I thought, you know what, I kind of like marketing. And I did basically an assignment on it, which got me an A. And I thought, you know what, I actually really enjoy how marketing works and how marketing influences individuals and people. So then I went to university and did marketing advertising. Did that and really enjoyed it. Got an okay grade. Admittedly, it wasn't an amazing one, but it just gave me the footing really to go forward into sales and marketing. And how do you grow businesses and how do you influence people to transact with them? So then I went into recruitment, which was a really, boiler room style environment. You walk in the boardroom, you don't come out. It was that type of environment we were in. And that gave me the ability and cut my teeth really on dealing with directors of fairly big businesses who were spending money on bringing in graduates into sales roles. And I just had an itch on me that I'd really wanted to get into marketing fully as a thoroughbred marketing person. With that commerciality that I've gained in recruitment, I actually came back to Hull because I was in Leeds for a couple of years. Went into Hull Truck Theatre as head of events, commercial events. So when they moved into...
I didn't know you worked at Hull Truck.
Yeah. So I was asked, would I be interested in going for the role? So I went and thought, you know what? It was starting from zero. So the commercial event side was put bums on seats during the day in the theatre for B2B events, essentially. Because on the evening, as we know, it's a working theatre. So it was actually zero revenue when we first joined, and we turned that into like $250,000 revenue in the first 12 months of being on Farnsworth, in the black box, as I call it. Brand new building, market the product, bring businesses in, huge events. I mean, the two big events that I remember doing was the James Martin chef. You remember James? Well, he's on TV now. And we booked out the full theatre for the full weekend. And the revenue we generated in those 2 days was unbelievable. We kind of made in 6 months that we would in the theatre. So that was kind of let's just call it a misdemeanor to the artistic individuals of the theatre because of the commerciality we were bringing into the four walls of the theatre. And then what stood out for me really, we did and we worked with quite a lot of stakeholder groups in the city. We brought, believe it or not, an international reflux conference into the city. So all these international surgeons coming in, literally flying into Hull to talk about the reflux system. And we held that at Hull Truck Theatre. So you can imagine the local economy and the impact it was having. Hotels being booked, restaurants being booked, bringing hundreds of thousands of pounds.
I mean, if you can market a reflux conference, then surely that was the moment in your career where you go, I can market anything. The only way, that's the only way is up.
That's it. And then that was when I started to involve myself quite a lot with other businesses in the local community. And that's when that made me find my way into Eskimo Soup, as we know as Esky now, so John Gilbert.
Yes.
We did a really good event with Innocent Smoothies, and that's when I started to interact with John, and John was kind of like, would you be interested in joining this marketing agency? And that's when I dived into thoroughbred marketing agency land. And I was there for 3 years. And I say to this day, and I've done a couple of podcasts, but John I see as a bit of not as a mentor, but somebody who really gave me some amazing advice and how he works and how he's strategic and how he plans and how he implements. I took a lot from John, to be honest, and we still meet regularly now. So if you see this, John, can you have that £10, please? So I learned a lot, and then that's when my entrepreneurial spirit started to come through, and this is when I dived into my own agency land. And we don't need to get too much into detail of that, but essentially over 2 years, we were fighting for work off the big boys in the city, which was amazing, really. And being nominated as Startup Business of the Year for the Hull Daily Mail Awards, and that was really cool. And that's kind of a nice self-satisfaction that, do you know what, we've got something here, and we can make things grow. And for whatever reason, we closed it down. And at the time, then I moved into what we call client side, so working for a business, a B2B. For a big pharmacy, I said big, but it was an SME, small to medium, Origin Pharmaceutical Packaging. Joined them at 9.5 milli, grew that to just under 27 million, 7.5 years. And that was the marketing side of that was a big influence because they never had a marketing department. Strategically, they never used marketing to grow the business. They literally were cold calling, and that was their form of marketing. But we implemented a really biased digital strategy, which allowed them to open up opportunities across the world. And that's where I landed now at John Good Group. We had, basically how the story goes is that old HR manager from Origin, she actually left to go to John Good Group. It was at the time when John Good Group divested Good Logistics, and my bearded gaffer kind of asked the old HR manager of Origin to just send me a message and say, would you like to meet for a coffee? And the rest is history, essentially. Met Adam, CEO of John Good Group. He had just joined probably about 10 months before that, and his job was to build out this new exec team and start on a new journey with John Good Group. As you'll know, that the T2 trainer we've been going through, we've been on a massive journey over the past 24 months. With Adam, it's been 36 months. And you know Adam, I bought into him.
He's a great guy. I mean, I work with a lot of CEOs, as you know, from all different backgrounds. And I'm not just saying it, and if he's watching it, I'll give him a bit of a G on this one, but he is a great leader. And I think he's someone who generally people want to follow. And I think that's important to you, isn't it? It's important that you work for someone who you're behind the person.
That's it, yeah.
And so I guess that was, from an early stage, you thought, right, this is the place I want to be and this is where I want to grow.
Yeah, and I think, because he's got a marketing background as well, it just helps the conversation across the table when it comes to growth and where we invest in. If I'm given the data and prove that actually you give me £1, I'll give you £3 back profit. He's like, and with the Ben CFO, just go for it. So the autonomy and the freedom that you're given, and that was, to be honest, the first interaction with Adam in a boardroom, which is before we moved into Corey House, the new head office. He literally said, just analyse this business for us, which was Good Travel Management at the side, our business travel division. And he said, just let me know your thoughts on the projection and the potential of this growth of this business. Now, we already knew the potential of that from just a general business sense, but he wanted to know from a marketing angle, where would you take this business? And what's the potential of it? Well, I've just done my data and I did some digging and I looked at the competitors and I just pushed a document over the table and said, let's start, because we can turn this into a bit of a behemoth. Forget about acquisition, this is organic growth. And that autonomy to go, well, here's your budget, go do it.
Love that, Rich. And one of the things I want to get out of this podcast is there's plenty of people going to be watching this who everybody is into marketing. Everybody understands marketing, or do they? But everybody understands the notion of marketing, and that actually good marketing is the catalyst for growth. Mm-hmm. We can talk about sales and salespeople all we want. But if you get your marketing right, it's much easier for salespeople to then go and chase after and convert that growth. So, but not many people understand how. It's more than just a website pushing out social media and doing some, activity. And so there'll be a lot of people watch this, but I want to bring it back to the first bit I want to explore, which is, what is marketing? And my belief is that marketing is fundamentally embedded in psychology. Mm-hmm. It is a psychological thing. What we're trying to do through the essence of marketing is we're trying to influence behaviors. Yeah. We're trying to bring something alive in the mind of the audience, if that makes sense. Yeah. I don't know if you would agree with that.
No,
There's probably more mechanisms.
Negatively and positively.
So would you agree with that statement? How psychological is marketing?
I would say it is very heavily embedded in psychology. The reason why I'm saying that is because the emotion you can create via marketing. And what I mean by that is we, I don't count myself as a marketeer, as perverse as that sounds, but I get under the skin of a potential buyer that I know of our brand. So how do they act, as in their activity around researching the business? If they view a piece of content, how do they react to that piece of content? And is it I'm not quite sure of them because they're too quirky or they've got a bit of personality. I just need somebody who's pragmatic and tell me the decision and what I need to do when I transact. So when it comes to emotion, I'm a big believer if you can bring emotion into your marketing strategy, you are halfway there to convince that individual to either buy or transact or to find out more about your product or your service.
So I love that statement. If you can bring emotion into your marketing strategy, you're halfway there. Can I dig a little bit into that? Give me an example of the way you would bring emotion into marketing.
I suppose that the hot off the press, I guess, is you don't necessarily say, but I'll use good travel management because it's easy because we've done that and we've gone on a journey with that over the past 18 to 20 months. And good travel management itself has a very good reputation, but it grew via word of mouth. It was, they're good, pick up the phone and speak to them. I've heard that you've looked after this business when it comes to business travel. And good travel management have never had a comprehensive go-to-market strategy partly reliant on a marketing strategy, as well as the salespeople going out there and building up relationships. But what marketing does is it builds that relationship before they've actually walked into the door.
It makes it a warm relationship.
Yeah.
It opens the door, like you said, maybe halfway there, then we earn the right to go in and develop that.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you look at an industry like business travel, it's really hard to differentiate yourself because this is, if you throw a blanket over the industry, everyone does the same thing. They book tickets, they look after the business traveller, they ensure that there's no problems that arise. And if they do arise, we'll solve the problem. So how do you, in a saturated market, make yourself a bit different? So as I walked in, it was obvious that the back of house was pretty much there. You can look at margins and you can look at processes. Majority was already there. Now, granted, Adam's done a phenomenal job back of house when it comes to fine-tuning margin and looking at how we can save a cost here, but also how do we send it to the bottom line. But front of house, the brand and how that looks like in the marketplace and how that talks and creates emotion, it didn't really have anything there. There was no personality. So as I walked in, it made sense that we've already got the assets here, which are ultimately our people. And the team that we have here in Hull, and obviously we've acquired certain businesses that we have in London and Tunbridge Wells, but on the whole, we've got amazing team who literally look after that traveller, that business traveller from, as we call the campaign at the moment, is door to door. So you leaving the office to go into America to Chicago for a business trip, you're literally looked after by these amazing teams. This is not, yes, we have some tech to make your life a bit efficient when you're booking travel, whether it's a travel booker or it's the actual individual. But that human being within GTM is actually holding your hand and going, don't worry about it.
So your job is to bring that alive. Is to get that message across, our USP, the thing that we stand for, the thing you're going to recognize us for is X, Y, and Z.
That's it.
And in every activity, piece of content, in whatever it is you do, has to be aligned to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving it on in terms of some of the psychology we do, and I'm going to give a poor plug to linking it to my recent book, I'm Human, Pain and Pleasure. I talk a lot about behaviours in pain and pleasure around all human behaviour is either governed by we are moving towards pleasure and reward. Mm-hmm. We want something. We get some gratification, satisfaction, some fulfilment or some reward back. Or we are moving away from survival, pain, i.e. the consequence of what might happen if I don't do this.
Yeah.
Equally, we find in psychology are both powerful. Sometimes claims are that moving away from pain and danger is twice as emotive as going towards pleasure and reward.
Yeah.
However, both are very essential to the way we make decisions.
Yes.
Would you agree with that in terms of marketing? It's either, is the message we're sending, you need to do this because there's a value, or you need to do this because if you don't, there's a consequence?
On the whole, yeah. And that works in certain situations. So, for instance, I mean, the easy thing to describe is if somebody's receiving bad service, and you as a GTM, your campaign is around, are you being looked after by your current incumbent? And you're sat there going, well, actually, to be honest, no. And you're feeding the pain to go, look, actually, there anybody out there that could give us better service? So that's where the GTM go-to-market strategy comes and goes, you're going to be looked after by a human being. You aren't just going to be shoved onto a tech platform where you're just going to go there and book your own travel. So that's you feed your pain to seek the pleasure, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the other side of that, looking on a wider scale, is I think those hard-hitting adverts that you see when it comes to cancer or anything quite serious when it comes to health, everybody's affected by it. So you're always going to associate yourself with it.
Life insurance.
Correct.
So there's this notion of going, I want to scare you a little bit into thinking about if something happens, God forbid, are your loved ones and finances taken care of?
Yeah.
And although some people might go, if you're a marketeer, you want to leverage that because that's what's going to compel the person to act and buy. That's equally as powerful as saying, right, this is, the towards pleasure angle and pitch. But life insurance or death insurance or cancer or whatever it might be creates that powerful emotion of, what if I don't do this?
Yeah, that's it.
What if I don't do this? What's the consequence?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is embedded, and it depends on what industry you're in, what product it is.
Well, tell you what the most recent thing that I saw and I can't even figure out if it's pleasure or pain, but there was an advert with a guy laid in a bath talking to his wife who's on the outside of the bathroom, and they're talking about cremation.
Yeah,
and it was actually a really uplifting advert. It wasn't you need to do this, because what it was doing was it was actually giving it a nicer angle on the fact that it's a serious subject matter, that actually this company who's advertising this service can look after your cremation. And it was just a general chat between a husband and a wife, and we need to sort it out because I'd like to go and be cremated. And it wasn't like a, thunderbolt and really bad music and it was all this, this is what happens when you die, you need to sort it out. They went the complete other way.
Yeah. It was like starting to think about how can we make an unpleasant situation and nice in terms of we've pre-planned it, we've pre-thought it, and we get what we want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would say, therefore, there's a lot of marketing which is directly towards towards pleasure or away from pain. But I also see sometimes these situations where it's not obvious that we're trying to attract the buyer towards pleasure or away from pain. We're just doing something so radical and different that it's memorable.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like something like, you remember those adverts where it's nonsense, but it's so memorable that the direct response to that is they buy the product. They're the ones I don't get.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, that's quirky, and I remember the tune, or I remember the advert, or I remember the slogan, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But would it compel me to go and buy the product? Or is that just about exposure and brand?
And I think there's an element of both. Exposure and brand, yeah, absolutely. If your activity is in the face of the potential consumer or the end user, then ultimately you're going to build some sort of trust or recognition there. But you're right, it's those standout adverts or the things that you see across the internet that actually, that makes me think I could go buy that because I thought I actually really liked that advert because it was good.
Yeah.
And that worked.
Because it appealed to me emotionally.
Absolutely.
In some fashion. Yeah. Like that. So towards pleasure or away from pain is embedded in the psychology of marketing. If you're watching this and you're thinking about your marketing strategy, or you're thinking about the way you promote yourself, your business, the way you conduct yourselves on social, whatever it might be, are you doing enough to provoke that emotional response in the audience, which gets them to think about moving towards something that will give them pleasure and reward, or move away from consequence?
I think actually, now you're talking, it makes total sense. And I think when it comes to B2B, so business to business and business to consumer, I think the likes of the Nikes, the Adidas's, your big sports brands do it really well. They don't sell their product, they sell an emotion and being associated with Nike. So it's part of the running club. You know what? If I wear Nike trainers, I feel good about myself and I'm just going to go out for a jog. Not, I'm going to sell you a pair of 200 quid trainers. And I think B2B have got to get a bit more braver when it comes to creating that either controversy or an emotion that triggers a potential audience that will allow them to open the door to a transaction. I think they've just got to become a bit more B2C, take some really good snippets from B2C and bring it into their B2B strategy. And there's a lot of businesses out there quite boring and they're quite straight and narrow. Just fall out the sides a bit slightly. And you may just find that who you're selling to, guess what, is a human being. So it doesn't matter if they're a key decision maker in a multi-million turnover blue chip business. If they're sat in front of the video and they're sat at their desk in their office and they laugh, they're bound to send an email 3 times out of 10 to their colleague and go, have you seen this video from X, this product and service that we potentially may buy? Then that's what we need to look at, because that's ultimately that human-led interaction, which actually we don't make out in B2B that everyone's aliens and they're all robots and they don't associate themselves with funny videos or a cat playing a piano. That's the thing that could come in my head. Remember the YouTube cat playing the piano? But that sort of stuff will go, I remember that. And I'm just going to send it internally to all my colleagues because it was quite funny. And then guess what? When there's a board meeting and there's a service that comes up that actually that video is associated with, they'll go, you remember that video and that service? That's what happens.
It's funny you should say that, because we, as you know, we produce a lot of content here at T2 and put a lot of time and effort into it. And a lot of our content is the fundamentals of what we do. You know, we're trying to impart knowledge with other people on giving them the tools to understand their brain, to understand behaviors, to understand performance. But, you know, sometimes the content that gets the most views and engagement is the end of year bloopers. Right? So that you put the end of year bloopers out where we've messed up on a podcast or a video or something. And it's everybody's laughing, joking, commenting, sharing. You're like, maybe we should just build a business of out of bloopers and messing up. You know, we would probably go more viral. But it's because that humor, they're human. They're not all serious, and they're not perfect. Mm-hmm. And I think that somehow attracts people more to you, because you're more like them. Yeah. You're not this well-oiled, primed, sort of perfect people on camera. So, yeah, the bloopers done it, Tom. It always gets. It always gets.
And Tom behind the camera, who produces all the visual content, you've just given him a massive compliment to as well.
Exactly. Well done on the bloopers, Tom. Okay, let me go into something different here, Rich. And I want to discuss it because I think there'll be a lot of people who want to sort of explore it, is the ethics of marketing. Yeah. So we're talking about B2B, B2C marketing, all companies market, and through the digital industrial revolution and social media and AI and all the rest of it, and we can talk a bit more about this in a bit, but algorithms on platforms, marketing's been supercharged, as in, you only have to search for something 3 times or mention something 3 times and you're seeing advert on your Facebook platform or TikTok platform. You're seeing it in abundance. Yeah. And it therefore starts to go from marketing where I have the choice to choose to do something which is mutual gain. Yeah. The company benefits, I benefit, to potential manipulation and a level of repetition that could be deemed unethical or dangerous. Yeah. Certainly when we look at the younger generation now, young girls with makeup and face products and fillers and eyelash lifts and whatever the product is. Yeah. What's your thoughts on ethics and where we're heading in society with getting the balance right?
It's actually a really...
I mean, it's a big topic.
Yeah, it's a poignant one just because like you've gone through it with your daughters, and I've got 2 young daughters who are about to encroach onto that era of mobile phones, and mobile phones leads to social media, and social media leads to algorithms and products and services that actually, do they really need to be exposed to that at this age? And it's one of those things where, as a generation coming through, phones are just given to younger generations, and that becomes a thing. They're just slapped in the hand and that's it. And ethically, whether that's the business who've got wrong ethics, but they're just interested in selling products, and their audiences potentially may well be younger people who are easily influenced. I don't think we're very sharp on policy, regulation. I think Australia have done a pretty good thing by banning TikTok from 6. You can only get TikTok when you're 16 and above. I think that's a good move. Because, as you've just mentioned, there's too many people out there or companies that have a very easy audience to gain access to sell a lot of product. And
sell a lot of product sell a lot of product, potentially tapping into very young people's insecurities.
Yes.
And so that's where the lines start to cross and it starts to become blurred. It's like I'm deliberately tapping into the way you look or the way you feel about yourself to compel you to buy these products that may, I mean, there's another thing, may be safe, not safe.
Yeah.
You know, maybe right for you, not right for you. And that to me is potentially the issue.
But we've self-engineered that.
Yeah, 100%. We're responsible for that.
And you take it from not just marketing channels, so your TVs, your social media channels. You take the reality TV shows as well and add that into the mix. We've just self-engineered ourselves into this place where we start using Botox and we start having makeup on at the age of 8, 9, 10 years of age. And the younger generation coming through is seeing these people on reality shows and going, I want to be like them. Not Jessica Ennis from the Olympics who comes away with a gold medal. She's a role model. That's what I mean by self-engineered. We are on a dangerous path to losing that the ability to follow somebody. Go, do you know what? I'm proud to follow you because you've achieved quite a lot.
And parental influence and guidance can have a lot to do with this, but it's sometimes parents are fighting against the tide because the sheer, like we said earlier, the emotional side of the brain that this is tapping into is so powerful for teenagers, especially that all the parental guidance and reinforcement under the sun, sometimes they're fighting the tide. But you're absolutely right. I talk about it in Pain and Pleasure around this comfort crisis. We crave comfort and security and reinforcement and validation more than ever. There is a chemical change in the brain in terms of our pain and pleasure scales. And what these adverts and what these products and what these platforms do is they know this, right? They know this, so they can quite cleverly target those insecurities, which then compounds. It's like a self-perpetuating cycle. It just compounds it and compounds it. And I think you're right. The next 20 years is going to be a really incredible time to sort of observe how this pans out and how it plays out for the next generations.
I think there needs to be some, it sounds quite a big statement, but there needs to be some sort of intervention when it comes to government and working alongside Facebooks, TikToks, or whatever. And that's when regulatory comes in. It has to be, because ultimately it's a ticking time bomb.
I mentioned one of the main things I say, and I make a big statement on it, is the biggest threat to humankind. We talk about ecological breakdown, nuclear war. We talk about pandemics. We talk about an asteroid hitting the Earth. You know, these big catastrophic events that could wipe out humankind. I talk about mis and disinformation being the biggest threat to humankind. And the reason for that is because I know we're talking about marketing and pushing product and influencing behaviours and decisions, but there's so much misinformation and disinformation, unregulated and ungoverned, which I think certain organisations and certain platforms are utilising to sell this stuff even more.
Yeah.
Right, you know, you see these claims, don't you, on an eyelash lift? You know, this and this will help you, or reducing your bags under your eyes, guaranteed to reduce the bags under your eyes. Just put 4 injections a week into your face, and so someone's going, that's misinformation. We know that that's probably largely misinformation, but that person doesn't understand that. That 17-year-old brain doesn't understand that, right? So I think misinformation and disinformation for me, when it comes to marketing product, is a big one. And I'm shocked at how unregulated it is.
Yeah, and to be honest, moving for the next 2 to 3, 4, 5 years, it doesn't look like it's going to be processes in place to withhold that sort of misinformation. That's when I come back to it. It's a ticking time bomb, because the next generation is coming through. Another generation is going to be influenced. And another one that's going to have 3 or 4 injections in the face because they think it's all right to do.
Yeah.
Has to be stopped.
Yeah. Okay, so I think there's a lot of people who would probably agree with us on that. And I think we have a big job to do in society to be able to find the balance with this. You know, we don't want to inhibit the potential of technology, social media, AI, and what it could do for us in the world going forward. But at the same time, we've got to be careful around the ethics
Yes.
I call it, manipulation versus mutual gain. Mutual gain is always both parties benefit. Manipulation is one party benefits to the other person's detriment.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing we've got to get right. Let's bring it back to marketing and businesses. And if you're watching this and you're interested in, are you getting it right? What are some of the fundamentals? So if there was some top tips, Rich, around what you see marketeers and companies doing well versus the opportunities, let's say, some people miss. Are there any glaring ones still today where you think, I can't still believe that people don't think more about this?
Yeah.
And by the way, I've got my T2 hat on here as well. So I would have been, I mean, I think we're pretty good at getting our brand out and through our social channels and by the nature of what we do. But by no means do I think we probably exploit all the opportunities available to us. So what would be some of the fundamentals of good marketing?
Great question.
In the modern day?
I think I still see it today. We've consulted for 2 or 3 businesses over the past couple of years where I've been at John Good for just a supporting in terms of marketing and what a company's missing. It's still done really poorly. And what I mean by that is it's the stigma still attached to marketing. And what I mean by a stigma is it's just marketing. We kind of need to do it because everyone else is doing it, but there's no real thought behind delivering a proper strategy that allows that brand to be built correctly with emotion attached to it. And then who's your audience and how are you going to go to market? Because not every channel in the marketing mix is right for T2 as it would be for good travel management. Just completely different audiences because of our different product and service that we sell. And I think a lot of businesses, in terms of top tips, is genuinely sit down for a day and just talk about marketing and what you think and what you believe. Actually, if you devise the budget, because that's half the battle sometimes, and give it to somebody who has experience of going to market with a product or service and allowing them to take you on a journey on that day and say, pre-data as well, before the session, and allow yourselves to just find yourself running down each channel and going, does this or will this have an impact on growth, on opportunity, on brand exposure? And you'll probably find that there'll be 2 or 3 channels within the marketing mix that actually, if you just decided to test that, whether it's right or wrong, it works and it doesn't, you can stop and start and move on to the next channel. There's not a lot of businesses that actually give it opportunity to test. So a robust strategy will allow you to then go, what are the part of the marketing mix that we can utilise with the budget? Because not everyone's got hundreds of thousands of pounds to invest, but allows them to test a channel and say, actually, we're comfortable. We know we can get a return.
So for some of the smaller companies who don't have hundreds of thousands of pounds, but let's say you went, initially I've got a $5,000 budget.
Yeah.
Is the amount irrelevant? It's how you target it and what you choose to do that can, even on a smaller scale, drive some results.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like, okay, we spent $5,000 and we got this. If we did the same thing and spent 10, we'd get double.
That's it.
But you can still drive results on smaller budgets. You don't need, because there's a lot of theory, isn't there, that the reason the big companies are great at marketing is because they're spending millions.
Yeah.
And you have to spend big to make a difference.
So why have they grown?
Probably because they got it right in the early days.
And they would have had a £5,000 budget.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm going back to that is because you can look at, I could use Nike again, huge conglomerate. So they ultimately would have started off on a small budget because to this day, yes, they're probably a billion turnover business. And where I'm going with this is they at some point have sat down and go, what do we feel our brand and how does that resonate with a target audience? So for you to say to me, yeah, but business haven't got lots of money to spend on budget, on marketing, well then go back to your brand and get that right and then drive authenticity through that. And everybody's got an iPhone. So you can start to deliver your brand via an iPhone, talking head, bring the emotion through. These are the types of people we are behind this business. Consistency, quality, and frequency will build that $5,000 into a potential break even in the first 2 to 3 months because of the opportunities you're going to bring in, because that certain video is planted there organically via LinkedIn or whatever. And that individual potential might see that video and maybe 2 or 3 that you've released over the duration of 6 months, and they start to build trust because you're authentic. You don't need hundreds of thousands of pounds to build authenticity. Everyone's got, statement here, everyone's got a mobile device that can produce content. And if you're producing trustworthy, regulatory, not misinformation, you're then starting to build a bit of a trust with your potential buyer. And they will eventually go, do you know what? I'm actually going to have a conversation with this product or service or this business because I like them, they're authentic, and actually I can see myself working with them or buying from them.
Authentic's a really good word to explore there, Rich, because I love what you said there around the 3 principles of your campaigns. So
I feel like I'm in a job interview.
Yeah, it feels like that, doesn't it? I'm just milking you for ideas. This is a podcast, but I'm thinking, when I get back into T2, I'm going to be doing some of this stuff. Illusions, right? So there's a great saying in psychology. There's 3 types of lie, right? There is the outright lie, the complete fabrication.
Yeah.
Now, this is a bad lie because you're creating something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the bad lie. The other 2 lies actually have a place in society, but I'm interested in your view on marketing. So there's the embellishment, which says, this is strictly true, but I'm going to embellish it a little bit.
In that all sales and marketing people.
Yes, I'm going to embellish it a little bit so it seems bigger, greater than it actually is. Why wouldn't I? But there's a truth to it.
Yeah.
And then there's the omittance, which says, I'm going to omit certain details from this because I think that would potentially put it in a more of a bad light.
Yeah.
So I'll cleverly omit certain things from the story or the narrative. So you've got the fabrication, the embellishment, and the omittance. There's a great saying, isn't there? Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah, that's one of my statements.
Right. Is there a place for that in marketing, and is that okay?
I mean, the severity of downright lying is, for me, should be anywhere near business or consumerism, because ultimately people can fall into traps. And as we kind of alluded to previous conversation,
You will get caught out eventually.
Yeah.
And then your authenticity goes, your integrity and trust with your customers go, and you're not getting it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Embellishment's a good word. Now, when it comes to marketing, and I include sales in this as well, you need to build trust. That's ultimately what you have to do, right? A marketing or a sales meeting, whatever that is. And you may need to think on your feet, or from a marketing strategy, you need to create the perception that this business that we have can look after you and can serve you in the right way, and we can appease what you're looking for. And ultimately, when it comes to that, that's just an adult conversation across the table when it comes to the first initial meetings. Okay, we can help you, but what do you actually need? And then you start to tailor your product or service to that individual or group or business or whatever that looks like. So the embellishment is to attract. So case in point, my old business at Origin, we opened up a New York office. Well, we didn't open a New York office. We had a PO box number. I mean, it's not a PO box number in New York, but you get a postcode. It's a satellite office. Yeah. And that's to give, as you put, the illusion that we have a global reach, and physically we have a global reach. So we purposely opened up in New York, inverted commas, because a lot of the pharma businesses, head offices, were based in New York. So if they come onto our site, and we built the trust over months around really cool videos, we've driven SEO through our site, and we come up on these terms, but they've started to see some videos across LinkedIn, and they build that trust. Then they end up on the site, and they go, do you know what? I really like this business, and I'm just going to find out a bit more. Go to the Contact Us page, and there's a New York office. I'm like, all right, wow, okay. They're not just based in the UK, they're based in New York. Now, physically, we're not there, but if they're coming for a meeting and they're asking for a meeting via the site, we would ultimately, if the opportunity is big enough, we pick a couple of flights, we get to New York, and we meet them. And that's how embellishment,
absolutely,
and reposition yourself.
And there's another element to embellishment, isn't there, where it's like it's almost like being very carefully selective around the narrative, the stats, and the data you use can embellish the size, scope, scale, and capability of your business. Now, it's not a lie.
No.
So, for example, I'll give you an example. We're coming up to 10 years here at T2, and one of the things we're doing when we launch our 10-year video, where is you're looking at the stats you're going to put up there. And when you look at social media, you could say you've got two stats you could use. So across all platforms, we could plaster across the first opening credits. We have 32,000 followers on social media platforms.
Yeah.
Now, 32,000 followers to some of the bigger organizations is nothing. Right? There's people with billions. There's people with 32 million, right?
Singular influencers who probably have.
However, when we look at the number of views and likes on across all our platform, it's millions. 4.2 million, was it, Tom? Something like that. 4.2 million views and likes across all social.
4.1 million of those is you at home.
Yeah, 4.1 million is my friends and family. It's rich. But so you go in, right, the embellishment element of that is good. Do you use 32,000 followers or do you use 4.1 million?
Yeah.
Well, you use 4.1 million.
But I challenge you on that slightly.
Go.
I agree with the whole perception of 32,000. Actually, in context, that's a lot of followers for T2. Now, T2 you're sat in front of me now, but a phenomenal business, and what you do and deliver for humans within businesses, it's amazing. So actually, 32,000 is pretty good. And actually, right, if you flip it and you say, well, actually, it's been viewed 4.2 million times across all our channels, I'd go a bit more granular this, and this is where authenticity comes in, and this is where your 5,000 budget comes in. Why not, my famous word, sorry, marketing team, if you extrapolate, I'm laughing to myself now, if you extrapolate that data, it's my word, extrapolate a little bit, is from that 4.2 million views, why don't you go back into how many employees you've worked with across all those businesses in 10 years? Okay, so let's just round numbers. You've worked with 10,000 employees across multiple businesses internationally, which you have, to be fair, not sure the number. But those 10,000, how much growth have you seen in those businesses from those individuals who's had an impact on the bottom line? So that company's grown by 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. So cumulatively, you look at those 500 organisations that you've worked with over the past 10 years, and they collectively have grown by £1 billion. That's a flipping good statistic.
Exactly, and this is where the embellishment of the truth, it is the absolute authentic truth, but sometimes carefully selecting what you choose to share either will enhance your brand or could reduce it. It could make you, it could hinder the brand. And there's a couple of times where we've looked at stuff the way we're trying to tell a story, and I've gone, is that the story we want to tell? Does that represent us in the best light? So embellishment, there's a place for it, is what we're saying. It has to be fundamentally built on authentic truth.
Agreed.
But you've got to think about what you're sharing, how you share it, and how that lands.
It's how you position that statistic.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll go back to statistics. That's kind of the theme we're talking about. But it's ultimately, don't just look at it as face value. So the 4.1 million views, how do you take that and make it even more meaningful to the potential customer that might see you when you release that 10-year video and go, we could work with T2?
Yeah. Just make a note, Rich is going to consult on the 10-year video in 3 months' time. So last one then, omittance then, leaving purposely certain pieces of information out that might not be what you want to share, not for any underhanded reason, but just for the reason of not bringing, if you've gone to embellish and position yourself in the best possible way, we don't want to hinder that or unpick that or contradict that. So there's a place for omittance as well. You've got to think carefully about that.
You do, because you don't want to fall over on the first hurdle if you open the door to a potential customer that you're trying to get across the line, and then it all falls down in the first meeting because actually you've pushed information aside that could be vitally important to the customer.
Yeah.
So there is a balance between saving information that you don't really want to be sharing, but ultimately the flip side of that is you need to be authentic and open the door to allow them to make that decision. Is this the right thing? Because you're just going to waste time. So they've got to be careful.
Yeah. Okay, last question. The future of marketing. We're in 2025. We live in, as we've explored, in this very progressive world of digital and technological capability. We've got the emergence of AI. We've got widespread uncertainty in the world. We've got the threat of ecological breakdown. We've got conflicts. We've got all sorts of
Welcome
things.
to 2025, everybody.
Yeah, we've got all sorts of things. Yeah, the future's bright. We've got all things, though, that are impacting the way people are influenced and think.
Yeah.
I talk in Pain and Pleasure about threats, the threat state, i.e. the ability for generations now to be sat at home in no danger, but be thrust into a threat state by what they consume in the news, on social media, through algorithms, etc. Marketing's going to play a big role, both B2B and B2C in the future. I think it's only going to go one way, right? AI is going to be AI. More advancements are going to be more advancements. Algorithms are going to get more clever. People at the age of 10, like you say, are going to be able to buy anything with a click of a button, or consume anything at the click of the button. What is the future? And is there anything you're expecting over the next 10, 20 years that's really going to come into play? Again, big question, probably needs an hour.
It needs an episode on itself. I mean, as we know, I'm not stating the obvious, but marketing, well, in business as well, but marketing specifically, it's progressed really quickly. And you put a super rocket up there when it comes to the likes of AI, it becomes quite scary if you don't look at it as an advantage, as an opportunity. If you look at it negatively, it becomes, well, AI going to take roles, AI going to reduce the workforce.
But you've talked about emotion all day. Deliberate emotion. You've talked about human beings tapping into other human beings' emotion and making deliberate strategies and plans to, and can AI do that?
No.
Okay. Yet, or
no.
Some people would say, yeah, but I'm
saying no.
Right.
Because a human can manipulate AI to do what it needs to do. I think AI plays a massive part when it comes to processes, efficiencies, making your business a bit more streamlined when it comes to delivering.
Speeding up campaigns.
Exactly.
Writing text and copy.
Exactly.
All of that.
You need a human being to not only manage that process for AI to kick out, but you're not going to rely on AI to watch a video what AI's produced to trigger an emotion, because it just becomes, you can see it already. I mean, it'll advance, but a human being can manipulate emotion via content it creates, and they've got to direct that. So the advances of AI, it's been a buzzword now for the past 2 or 3 years. It's always been here. It's just because now it's become a thing, and it's a forefront of a thing that, data and information, we're managing it now for our own advantages to make our businesses a bit better, or we quicken up the processes. You can knock out.
So in your marketing department, would you say there's an advantage to one of your content creators, content marketers going, I need to do a blog this week, Rich. I'm just going to get ChatGPT to do it.
Yeah.
Versus you going, no, I want you to write it yourself with your language, your emotion, your ideas. Or is there a place to go, actually, writing a general blog on the updates in the travel management industry?
Yeah.
Could be done by ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
It's a really good question. I would always use somebody who's a copywriter. So somebody who is genuinely amazing at creating emotion via words.
Rather than
ChatGPT.
Yeah.
However, ChatGPT, admittedly, and Perplexity is another format that we use them internally in our marketing department across all businesses, because it allows us to give us a structure and a plan and direction if we need to create something quickly. But I always say to the team, as soon as that's produced by an AI widget, ChatGPT, we will always humanify it afterwards. Never ever let that go out the door
until we've
actually riddled it with our human touch.
And so the speed of it then it's almost counterbalanced by the fact that we're going to review the entire thing and potentially tweak.
You're still quickening the process up, because you're not a good copywriter would take a couple of days to create a very, very good blog.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're using means of a ChatGPT, not potentially a blog which will create emotion, but a blog around, as you said, policies have changed in the travel industry, you allow ChatGPT to go do its research and bring it back to you, but you need to then basically make it sure it's the right tone for your brand.
ChatGPT and other AIs, as we know, are still susceptible to misinformation. If they're pooling from data on the internet that includes misinformation, and that gets regurgitated.
Yeah.
We had an example of this where we Googled Chat GPT to be able to tell us about, we use print as a tool, tell us about the profiling tool print, and it came back with some incorrect statements. Obviously, because we know it like the back of our hand, but it was a bit of a test of, and it's probably because it's pulling from someone's page block or whatever it might be where that was incorrect to start with. So the regurgitation of misinformation can be supercharged by AI if it's not advanced and governed.
I think ultimately, if you control it to the best of your ability, then AI will always be an advantage, and it would always create opportunity and speed.
Yeah,
which is important now because humans expect if they go to Amazon, they can get a parcel on their doorstep 3 hours later.
Why can't we do a blog in 10 seconds?
Yeah. So that's coming our way, and I think ultimately, marketing, the future of marketing, will play a huge part, and if we don't control it, will enhance that ticking time bomb. And if government, no, I'm not just talking about UK, but internationally, if we don't control, and control's a strong word, in the right way, so it's not influencing the wrong people.
Govern. It's about governing it. We yes, people need to have the freedom to innovate.
Absolutely.
And we need to, but we need to have some principles of governance.
That's
we
it.
need to make sure it's going in the right direction. Yeah.
Because otherwise, as we know, we've self-generated and self-engineered our generation coming through, where they think it's okay to put 4 needles in your face, and that to me is on the wrong road to an actual catastrophic end to that. Yeah,
I agree. Right, I'm going to drop a question on you to finish this podcast. See if you can think on your feet, clock speed. You know us at T2 pretty well. You see us from a distance. You see what we do. If there was one marketing tip you would give me to say, given the nature of our business, what we do, I'm a big one for sharing. I say to Tom all the time, let's not lock our content away in the T2. We've got the T2 hub and it's got lots of content on that doesn't go out there. But let's not reserve everything for paying customers. Let's give the world some stuff. I'm just a big fan of that. Right? Every public conference I speak at, if it gets filmed, generally goes online. You can watch it on YouTube. And some people say to me, Martin, it's like, why would you put all of your content on YouTube? Why would I come and pay to see you speak or come to an event you're at if I can just watch it on YouTube? And I say, well, and I'm not putting myself in the same realms, but I'm saying, well, you could watch Beyonce's concert online, but you'd still pay to go and see her.
I'd watch you over Beyonce every time.
Thank you, Rich. I can't believe I've just made a reference to Beyonce versus myself. Oh my God. But I'm a big fan in sharing is what I'm saying. However, maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, maybe what we do. But if there was one tip you would say, look, from what I see of you and T2, think about this, what would it be?
That's a really good question. It's a difficult one. For me, it's how do you gain access? Let's just say you've got a top 10 golden list of businesses you would love to work for. And if you're a proper business, I guess you probably will have those golden eggs that you want to work with. The one tip I would do is you've kind of alluded to it anyway via, I call it ungated. So ungated content. So you're not asking someone for an email to download the video or to download the piece of content on your hub. You're just allowing them free rein because they're just going to build trust at that point. But when it comes to your top 10 golden eggs of businesses, how do you allow yourself to, without devaluing your product and service, by interacting with them and saying to them, give me a day and I'll show you an impact of the impact that I can have in a day, physically in an office or a meeting space or a conference room with your top team. So you're not charging for that. And that is a form of marketing because ultimately you're showing you're putting
proof of concept.
You're putting your money where your mouth is essentially from your product because that whole intents and purposes of, I saw you on YouTube, so why do I need you to come and why do I need to go pay? Not how expensive you are to put in a conference on a stage.
Do you know what's interesting about that, Rich? 10 years ago when I started out, that's how I started. Nobody was going to pay me in the early days because I had no brand, no proof, no track record, etc. So I used to, all the time in the early days, I'd say, come in, let me do a day proof of concept. Yeah. I'll work with you in the day. If you like what you see and you see the impact, then we have a discussion. I reckon that was the reason we got our first dozen clients on board. The question is when you get bigger and you get more established and 10 years on, the dilemma for us is actually servicing the amount of clients we have and not so much always looking for new ones. You stop doing stuff like that sometimes, I think.
It's called, and I'm a big believer in this, it's opportunity cost. So provide an opportunity at cost to the business, but actually in the medium long term, you get paid dividend for it.
Yeah,
because ultimately,
if you're good at what you do,
absolutely, and you've already proved that 10 years worth of delivering what you've done from you sat in an office across at the Deep, which I can remember vividly. And you even asked me that question at that point: is how do I market this thing to get it where I want it to be? And 10 years down the line, as you've said, we're at a good problem, which is we don't want to onboard too many customers or clients because we want to service them to 100% of our ability. So for me, it's go back. People overcomplicate marketing too much.
Back to the basics. Yeah.
Too many people and too many businesses overcomplicate it because no one's fault, but you've got this fad term that comes out from a marketing expert via LinkedIn, and it's like, but all we're doing is we did it 50 years ago, 60 years ago, however marketing became a thing. We're just doing the same thing, which is a good visual or a good piece of content written, and we're trying to trigger that individual we're targeting to go, actually, I'm going to find out more.
I don't often listen to Gary Vaynerchuk as advice, but there's one thing that I remember. I watched something he said, and he does practice what he preaches with this. And it's sort of we went down a road, didn't we, where every single thing we put out online had to be perfect.
Yeah,
the visuals, the audio, the editing, everything. And he sort of said, no, put out just raw content, just put content out.
Yep.
If it's not the best camera shot, it's not the best camera shot. If it's got some noise in the background, it's got noise. If someone's walking past the window, someone's walked past the window, right? And if someone comes in and empties the bins halfway through a podcast, carry on, right? And I think there's something to be said for that, because I think we get caught up in perfection.
That's it.
Everything has to look and sound amazing, but then it becomes robotic. It's inauthentic. It's unemotive.
So those businesses who are trying to grow ultimately are always afraid because they want to create that manipulation, that perception that we're a big business.
We're big and we're professional.
But actually what you're trying to do is just create an open the door to your business, to your potential customers, going, look at us. This is what we deliver, and we're really good at what we do. And flip it on your side, going back to your Gary Vaynerchuk stuff, which I don't listen to him anymore because some of this stuff is way into the other stratosphere. But go back to basics, that theme. I'm watching, and I have TikTok for a reason, because believe it or not, I'm getting my head around TikTok and the algorithm. And we've got a new product, a new business that sells padlocks, and we're potentially using TikTok for a B2C angle proposition. It makes sense. So I'm flicking through the death scroll, as you would call it. But I see Waitrose, highbrow, target, high net worth individuals. That's their brand. That's who they target. That's their audience. And it's a flipping local Waitrose store with obviously a guy that's worked there for years, quite a senior guy. It looks quite old, however you want to position it. But he's juggling Maltesers bags on his feet. He's laid on the floor. And this is branded Waitrose. So Waitrose's marketing team at head office have gone, we're cool with that.
Yeah.
Because that's authenticity again. And that's basics. That's a video, an iPhone in a local store with a guy juggling Malteser bags on his feet. But that's funny. And that's like, Waitrose would never do that.
They're the same. I've got to stand corrected. Tom was a big instigator in saying we need to be on TikTok. And at that time, I went, TikTok is for teenagers who do dances, right? And anyway, we set up, it's our fastest growing platform. We have the most views and followers on TikTok. The consultants now, when they're on their journeys with their mobile phones, are doing a day in the life of a consultant, from getting in the car to going to the client to just before they go on to how it went afterwards. And people are watching it and going, that because you're normal, that's a normal day, and so it sort of it takes away the corporate polished element of it, and it makes you a little bit more raw and authentic. So I think there's I've learned a lot from that. Put out imperfect content. It's actually more authentic at times. Right. I think we've done quite a substantial podcast there. Rich, I think it's safe to say me and you could probably do 4 hours. And people would be losing the will to live after 3. But maybe we get Rich back and we'll do another one on some other bits and bobs. But I found that fascinating, and hopefully our viewers and listeners have too. So Rich, thank you very much.
No worries, I enjoyed it.
And we'll be back again shortly with another People Performance podcast.